Thanks so much. Matt Hamel is running for City Council. He's a lawyer. Again, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Susan Vitale is also running for City Council in Chesapeake. And thank you for being here as well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so this is not the normal MO for the J.R. Hoeft Show, that is for sure. We'll return you back to your regularly scheduled programming tomorrow with the podcasts. In fact, have a pretty good, interesting interview that's already in the queue with the Senior Vice President and Chief Nuclear Officer of Dominion Energy, talking about Surrey and Lake Anna and stuff. So we'll get that posted tomorrow, and it'll be a lot of good fun. But I figured, hey, we've got, if you haven't noticed, Chesapeake residents, there is a election coming up here in May, and having the opportunity to talk to you guys, I think just be a lot of fun. So thanks for being here.
No, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So let's talk a little bit about the election proper. Why have you decided to run for city office? I mean, why would you want to do that? Matt, why don't you go ahead and start?
Well, first I think we ought to talk about the fact that there's a big race happening in Chesapeake, and we've been walking a lot door to door, and I don't know that the majority of people know how many seats are up for election or re-election in this cycle. And obviously there's a big mayor's race, and then there are essentially 7 other seats that are up out of 9. All but 2 seats are basically up in play in this election. And so part of why I'm running is I'm very concerned about the future growth of this city. I'm concerned for my kids' sake. I've got four young kids. I want them to want to go away to college. I want them to want to come back to Chesapeake to live. I want this city to grow in a very common sense and responsible fashion. But I also want to thank you for having Susan and I, because I know you are a Navy veteran, as Susan and I both are, and we thank you for your service. And I think it's wonderful that you are continuing your public affairs, the skills that you developed in the Navy to educate the public, and I think you're really providing a service with this. I mean, it gives us an opportunity to talk about what we're up to. For me, my family came to Chesapeake just like so many thousands. I mean, we have 30,000 veterans, I think, right now in the city. And my family came here originally about 13 or 14 years ago on Navy orders, just like so many other people. And for me, before that, I was working in New York City, going to law school at night, and I was trying to put myself through school, and I was working in a building that was attached to the North Tower of the World Trade Center. And I used to get to work really early and study in the morning. And I was sitting at my desk on the morning of September 11th on the 34th floor of number 2 World Financial Center. And I felt the first plane hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center, because my building was attached with a walkway. And I remember walking over to see what was happening, and I thought, my first instinct was like, did something blow up, like from the inside? Like how? And I started to watch people jump out the window, and I watched women holding their dresses down to jump with dignity, and men holding hands with other men to jump. And I thought to myself, how horrific must that have been, that was the better alternative. And then as I was standing there, I witnessed the other plane come around and bank into the South Tower. And then we started running towards the stairs, because we were the next tallest building, and we thought that we were under attack at that point. Mm-hmm. And that led me to want to join the Navy. And I don't want to take up all the time talking about it, but that's what essentially brought me to service originally. Was I was on a totally different path. The bank was paying me to go to law school at night, and it was an event like that where I said to my wife, we were newly married 18 years ago, or 17, I guess, when this occurred, and I said, look, I really would like to serve the country. And so that was our foray into military service. The Navy brought us here, and I could go on and on and on about our story, but that's what brought us here, just like so many veterans. And so I'm honored to be sitting around a table with some great other Navy vets.
Well, definitely thank you for that story. I mean, we had not talked about that before. I mean, I've known you through the course of this campaign, but I had not heard that story before. And I think that a lot of folks, as you mentioned can identify with 9/11 as an impetus for their military service, but just beyond that, the city of Chesapeake has so many military veterans that live here that having a veteran's voice on council is very important. So, Susan, let's talk about your military service and your history and how you got to Chesapeake.
Okay, well, Matt and I have a lot in common. That's, because obviously my entree into Chesapeake was also through the military. I retired from the Navy after 26 years of service. I was a naval intelligence officer. I think earlier, before we started the live podcast, we actually were talking about we have a perfect wardroom here. We got at least starts of it. We got the intel officer, the JAG, and the PAO, the public affairs officer. So we really have it all covered here. Other than for the support for the warfighter, but I ended up coming to the area right out of college. I was had received orders to Virginia Beach, to Damnick, and so I ended up, after 26 years, completing about half of my tours, half my time in the Navy was here in this area. And, I was heading into the end of my career, and I was trying to decide where I wanted to, live and where I wanted to settle down and kind of put down roots, start my family. And I just knew I wanted to be in Chesapeake. I wanted it to be here. As I was retiring, I was kind of introspective about, what was I going to miss about being in the Navy? And one of the things that I knew that I would miss most of all was serving. Because I think that whether you have served in the military or whether you're serving in public safety or education, serving the public is just something that there's really no substitute for that feeling of gratification. Every day you wake up that you really have served a calling. And so that's why I am running for City Council, is I want to continue my service to the people of Chesapeake. I want to be a part of guiding that future and being able to continue to have Chesapeake be that place that others say, where do I want to go? Where do I want to raise my family? I want to raise them here.
Absolutely, and a lot of people have thought that. When I first got into the area, I was blessed, and odd to say this, but I really was blessed to spend the entirety of my career home ported here in Norfolk.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that doesn't mean that I was always in Norfolk.
No, somehow that doesn't always work out that way.
Exactly. But we came to the area. I came to the area in 1994. And I initially moved into apartments, I think they're called Red Cedar, the Red Cedar apartments across from Walmart at the time. And when I first came into Chesapeake in the Greenbrier area, you wouldn't know it obviously now, but a lot of it was countryside. It had not been really developed yet. Where we are today, I went from there, ended up going to Riverwalk, and then from Riverwalk managed to find myself down here in the Hickory area. But the long and the short of it is I have just seen over the course of 24 years now Chesapeake really expand and grow, and it's been a good thing, for the most part. Throughout the 1990s, if I get my statistics correct, we were growing at a 30% clip. Something along those lines, and I think right now, obviously, we're still growing. We are you're running to be, council members of the third largest city in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the conversation for 24 years has always been manage the growth. How do we keep this under control?
Yeah.
I'm not so sure, you can plan all you want. We got a comprehensive plan for 2035 that we'll talk about a little bit, but maybe more just like in general terms. People want to move to Chesapeake. That is a good thing. It's because it's managed so well,
right.
and people have good housing values. They have good opportunity, good jobs, low crime, great schools, low taxes. Everything that you would find attractive in a city is here. So I guess
we're all here, right?
That's right. So long-winded question, how do you maintain that? how do you guys keep that momentum going? What do you think? Long question, but feel free to.
You want to field that first? Or
Well, I'll start by, I do think that, we need to bring more business to Chesapeake. That's one way that we need to, I think that we need to grow. Right now, our business to resident ratio is at about 18%. And I think that's something that if we can increase that, it's kind of spurs everything else. We end up bringing business here. It ends up creating jobs. It is great, helpful for the great economy, and our schools are continue to be the best. It permeates everything else that we do, and so I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I see in our future is that we do need to be able to bring more business to Chesapeake.
Okay,
Matt.
Well, I would definitely agree with that. I think we share a lot of similar political philosophies as far as that goes, and I'll talk about that in a second. But what I look at are the numbers, and if you look at in 2007, the city had a population of 221,000. Fast forward to 2017, we're at 239,000 people, and that's an annualized growth rate of 0.72%. So we're growing. If you look at and those are the numbers from the city's own numbers.
Yeah.
That's an annualized growth rate of less than 1%. The question really becomes, if you want to ask the hard questions, is are we growing in the right areas?
That's right.
Because if you break that down by, some people use the word boroughs or parts of the city. Believe it or not, the two fastest growing areas, the two that are over 1% over the last 2 years for annualized growth, is Greenbrier and Deep Creek. Yeah. And so when I'm walking around Deep Creek and talking to people, which I've done as recently as this past weekend, people are concerned. They don't care about my 0.72% number. They're like, hey, take that 0.72% number and shove it, because I'm sitting in traffic getting down off the highway to my house, and I can't make the turn and get over the bridge. I can't do this, and my kids are sitting in overcrowded classrooms. So, politicians can talk all they want about numbers, but when you're annoyed about those things, that's a concern. I just to get back to what I think Susan was talking about, I agree with her 1,000,000%. I think that the future economic growth of this city really runs from Greenbrier down the Dominion corridor. But how we grow that is really the $64 million question. And I think that by bringing daytime jobs into this city, and especially into certain parts of this city, like South Norfolk and some places that could use significant economic development, like that 4Kids program. You put 50 to 100 new daytime workers at 4Kids. These people need to have their dry cleaning done every day. They need to go out to lunch every day. And some of them don't want to commute very far, so they're going to live close by. And you pump that into an economy. That's how we revitalize certain areas of the city, or how we vitalize certain areas of the city.
Yeah.
So I agree with Susan that the daytime jobs is key, and that would help with revenues, keeps taxes low, and it attracts a vibrant workforce and people who want to educate their children.
For sure. And speaking of education, that's clearly got to be a large part of the conversation, because
Absolutely.
half of the city budget goes to the public schools.
As it should.
As it should. Right now we are at 52% of the budget is coming from the city. And I know Matt shares that same view with me, because we both have young children. I have a 6-year-old daughter who is
Yeah, exactly.
Who drives you cuckoo sometimes, right?
Thank you. She is starting first grade next year. And so, obviously, the great schools are what brought me to Chesapeake. I knew that I was going to be starting that family. And we need to be able to protect that. We need to be able to invest in that and make sure that we're continuing to have the best schools. And that's going to require often us making up that shortfall that the state's not doing.
Absolutely. We are getting some folks to actually watch the podcast, which is good, or the live stream. So hello out there. If you have a question or a comment for Susan or Matt, I will try to get to it if I can, if I see it out of the corner of my eye here as we're in part of the conversation. So please feel free to leave your question there, and we'll get to it as we go. And thank you very much for those who have already said very, very dignified individual indeed. Phyllis Krasnoff has said she is supporting your campaign.
We love Phyllis.
We love
Krasnoff.
Phyllis. Thank you
Exactly.
so much. Yeah.
So we appreciate Phyllis and the former mayor and now clerk of court
Absolutely.
for
we
also
love him
tuning
too.
in.
Thank
so
you, Alan. Appreciate that.
Thanks for being here. Yeah, we welcome your questions and your feedback on the live stream. Lots of issues, face the city. It is an urban environment. It is a suburban environment. It is a rural environment. It has the mix of all three, and trying to figure out how to balance the competing priorities of those areas of the city it has to be a challenge. And so, getting back to the education question, though, let's hypothetically say that you're a young family and you bought your home. You heard about this great school, School A. Mm-hmm. And you want your kids to go to School A. And so your eldest goes to School A. But School A has, a problem. And that problem is a lot of people want to live in the current boundaries of where School A is. And so it gets to the point where School A has all sorts of portables and things of that nature. As we continue to develop and continue to plan and that sort of thing, the school board determines that, those kids that, some of those kids that were in School A have to go now to, a new school, School B. And the family that was there might not be happy with that. They might be kind of upset about that. And they wonder, and they look at city council and they say, why did you overdevelop in region A? Why did you do that? What would you say to that family if their eldest went to School A, but their youngest now has to go to School B?
You asking me, Jim?
I'm asking both of you. Conversation.
You want me to take that one first?
Sure, you go ahead.
Well, first of all, if Alan and Phyllis Krasnoff are watching this podcast, I think we should do a huge shout out to Alan and Phyllis Krasnoff.
Absolutely.
You guys, they are so awesome. And in fact, when I came back from Iraq in 2008, Alan, when he was the mayor of Chesapeake, appointed me to the Mayor's Commission on Veterans Affairs, and it has been my honor to be a part of every single one of the Veterans Day and Memorial Day ceremonies that we do outside of City Hall. I've been a part of putting those on as part of that commission. And Alan also started this Mayor's Breakfast to honor veterans, which is now a staple. And so for somebody who never served, I know of nobody who honors veterans more, and particularly in a public way, than our former mayor. So I thank him sincerely for that, and his wife Phyllis is just amazing. To answer your question, I really think that I would say to those people, that sucks. I mean, quite frankly, I would say that you spend $350,000 to $400,000, on a house. Yeah. And you think that your kid is going to go, and you buy a house because you want your child to go to X high school, and then all of a sudden your child gets ready to go to X, and maybe you even spent more than your budget on that particular house so your child could go to that high school, and they can't. That isn't right, and that isn't fair. But really, that's a question, though. The rezoning is something that the school board predominantly does.
Right, yeah. But they blame... And your citizens blame everybody.
Well, I do think that what I've seen, and I have not, neither one of us has been elected before, I do think that there is a good working relationship between city council and the school board. And I cannot necessarily speak or take credit for good things or be blamed for the bad things that happened before. But I will tell you, if I'm elected, how I would handle these things going forward is I would certainly encourage the school board to look at zoning before the developments are done. So if we have a development like Bryant Cove coming in, let's make sure that we are looking at these things so we don't have that problem in the future, number one. Number two, I think that the school board could have rezoned on a citywide basis, and that would have been the harder way to go, but it might have alleviated some of that problem going forward. But we are where we are, okay? Yeah. And so what I think as a member of city council, really where we would be influencing things is if we're going to approve a project or approve a rezoning, we need to have a consistent basis to do that. We need to look at levels of service. We need to take our cue from the planning department. We need to look at how this is going to impact the infrastructure that's in place and the overcrowding of the schools, if it would be overcrowded. And if we take an approach from a consistent basis going forward, I think we'd have a better plan. And that would be how I would approach the decision.
Okay. And your thoughts?
Well, I think that, a good alignment between City Council and the school board is critical. And I, agree with Matt that we have, that would be something that if we were elected, we would certainly strive to have that close-knit relationship with them. I do think that, Matt's right and eloquently put. I agree with him that it's not ideal when you have to have a rezoning that affects where your kids are going to go. I think one thing that probably we could do, and again, this is a school board issue that I respect how the school board handles it, but I think that even speaking with them now, they are looking at a more comprehensive citywide plan. And I'm not, again, I don't want to speak for them, but I know that is something that they're considering. And that, as we start to plan new neighborhoods, we need to be aware of, okay, where are the schools that are being underutilized, where are the schools that are being overutilized, and can we take that into account before we perhaps put new additional developments in. So.
Absolutely. For all these people who are moving to the area, they have to have places to work.
That's right.
And I see a couple of different dynamics. Okay, all of us are military veterans, and all of us live in Chesapeake. Northwest is a wonderful base, but you might have worked there, perhaps, but I would wager to say that we didn't. Most of us didn't. Most of us, we lived in Chesapeake. We commuted to, either Norfolk Naval Station, went off to JIFCOM, or the place formerly known as JIFCOM in Suffolk, down to Dam Neck or Oceana, one of those major bases. So that means that we are very much if you are a veteran or active duty military living in Chesapeake, you commute to work using the automobile. That being said, there are plenty of our citizens who are veterans or have no military affiliation whatsoever who need a job in Chesapeake. And John Coble chimed in here. He said, what are the economic interests or business interests that you would try to attract to the city of Chesapeake to grow that Greenbrier business corridor and that sort of thing? So it's a good question.
Yeah.
Are we looking for kind of white collar jobs? Are we looking for manufacturing? What kind of?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, but how?
Yes.
I mean, what would we want to do as a city to bring business to the area?
So, want me to handle that one?
Yeah,
I'll start. I work in the tech industry. I run a $50 million business for a technology company. So, I'm very much aware of what, attracts those kind of corporations. The things that, we need to be looking at are to attract that kind of business and those kind of, positions. We need to have renewable energy opportunities there. We need to be able to look at that. Large corporations want to be able to have renewable energy. The broadband that is coming in with our digital port in Virginia Beach. Being able to tap into that, we are at a place where we really need to maximize the opportunity there. So those are the things that I think attract business. We obviously are in a great location. We, are in the middle of waterways, highways, trains, we have railways. So we have a wonderful opportunity here and to attract business. And I think that we want to have, a diverse type of business. You want to be able to have that kind of more diverse portfolio. So I definitely encourage all those types, but great. And the nice thing is we have such great schools here, including, our trade schools, that we have a well-educated workforce that's ready to go.
Right.
And that's really attractive to, business. So I think that that's something that we really can capitalize on as well.
Can you read what
I can read you verbatim. Yeah, the question says, "What infrastructure / economic interests would you try to establish / entice to help further your discussion of growing the area?" And then he talks about his background. He lived in the region until 2005. Graduated from Oscar Smith and is currently working on his BA from William and Mary on his GI Bill. So he's veteran.
Wonderful.
So he's doing
Thank
good.
you for your service.
Awesome. Good job.
Because the question intrigued me at the beginning about what sort of infrastructure.
Yeah, that was the follow-on to my.
So that's a very interesting question. I think that we first have to set the regulatory environment to want to attract business, and I think that is going in a very good direction. The second thing the City Council recently did was raise that BPOL threshold from 100,000 to 200,000. I think that is it could be a huge draw for very small businesses coming. I thought when you read it the first time, I thought he might have been alluding to, expanding military installations in Chesapeake or things like that. And then my mind started thinking, well, we did get the FBI to relocate on Clearfield Avenue, in Greenbrier, which is not part of what I was focusing on before talking about the Greenbrier to down the Dominion corridor. But there is a lot of land out there too, and I don't think that we should foreclose the possibility of trying to attract additional federal jobs there, additional military jobs there by creating a very pro-business environment. But I wanted to try to get at what he was really, and if he's still watching, maybe he can ask a follow-on question about it, because setting the right kind of infrastructure for that if you mean setting the right kind of having more bridges or more access to transportation to want to attract business, that's taking the question in a different direction. I didn't know if he meant that.
Well, I mean it. That's actually something I wanted to get to. You see, I believe that just this week, Rose Transit announced that they're going to start focusing on the east side of Norfolk with expanding light rail. Okay, I guess their experiment with Virginia Beach and possible expansion into there, they haven't gone that general direction. But Chesapeake has not been involved in that conversation very much. I know, or at least publicly involved in that conversation. How do you guys feel about the possibility of a light rail type system in Chesapeake?
You want me to take that so?
Not necessarily connected to Norfolk, but maybe just even internal, or the buses operating better.
I would say this. I think that there was a missed opportunity when Virginia Beach voted down that expansion from Newtown Road to Town Center. And I think and plus I think that was voted on 2 other times before then, so it's going to bring the vote back till they got a result I think that they wanted. And I think it was a missed opportunity, because had that been the catalyst for a comprehensive light rail plan that would have connected military bases, the ocean front, and up to heavy rail on the peninsula, that could have been a huge catalyst for economic growth. It could have been a huge catalyst for attracting millennials. Unfortunately, I think for Chesapeake, we can't do that. We should not. I don't think it would be in our citizens' best financial interest for us to now take the lead on that and create a light rail in Chesapeake. Now, if we had that as the framework, I would absolutely have supported a line to Greenbrier and then to go further. But I don't know that we could take or dedicate our citizens' tax-paying dollars and put it towards that. I applaud Norfolk for what they're doing. I think we need to look at better bus opportunities right now. I think we need to look at express buses to different parts of the city to help people get to jobs, maybe come up with creative plans with that. But I just don't see us taking the lead as a good use of taxpayer money right now.
I think really what we're saying is it needs to be a regional approach. Ultimately we have to have this as a regional approach.
Right.
It's just the idea of having it just in Chesapeake, that would be just limited. I think, if we're going to do that, we need to really have a much more comprehensive, approach to it.
I am going to bring sort of some of my family's dilemma into this. Maybe it's a little too personal for the conversation, but we'll talk about it anyway. My sister does not have an automobile. and she has to bike to work. And I'm not going to say the regions where, but it is around the Greenbrier area. And it's very difficult for her to get from where she lives to where she works. There is no, she at one time she had a job at the Virginia Beach Convention Center, and the possibility of her taking public transit from Chesapeake to Virginia Beach, you might as well just take the entire day. It takes about two and a half hours to get the bus from where she lives and go through Norfolk and then out to Virginia Beach and whatever, switch over the whole 9 yards. We have a very unwieldy, nasty public transit system in the area, and so I guess, how do we make it more pedestrian friendly? How do we make it more bike friendly? Is that even a concern? Because quite frankly, the automobile dominates the city of Chesapeake. And I guess kind of what I'm hearing, I know that in the comprehensive plan they talk about doing that a little bit, but do you guys think that, c'est la vie, to folks who are like that? And I'm not, if you're saying that to me, that's fine, because quite frankly, I'm like, say that, myself. But, do we? How do we improve that? Because we were not designed as that type of community. We were designed as an automobile community.
Yeah, I think we certainly could do better on our buses, and I was just, matter of fact, in an interview yesterday. With a group that that was one of the questions was they like some of our we want to be able to have our employees work where we live, but they need public transportation, and then there's some that don't live in Chesapeake that work here, but however that is, we definitely need to address that, because we have changed. It is your sister's situation isn't unique, I don't think so. I certainly would support trying to expand that. Matt, you have any?
I would too. I think though, the question. Look, like I said before, we're a city of almost 250,000 people, and the city also is a very diverse landscape. We have parts of the city that are very urban. We have parts of the city that are very rural.
Right.
In fact, my one son played a baseball game in Elizabeth City, and I was driving down Route 17, to past Cornland, and it struck me in my mind again about how rural and how much land we have down there, and it's beautiful. But to be real honest with you, it wouldn't make sense to run public transportation down there.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, if I told you I was going to raise your taxes to put public transportation down there, you'd probably say you're crazy. Mm-hmm. So I think if you dissect the question and look at it from different parts of the city, it is absolutely something I would support. But again, I think this is part of a plan. We need to have a plan, okay? And you referenced before the 2035 comp plan. 2035 comp plan is just a plan. It is not etched in stone. And in fact, I think there are two things that are lacking in that plan. One is there's no timing of development, and there's no way to fund the infrastructure. Yeah. There's no mechanism to fund the infrastructure as part of the plan. So that's part of why I'm running. I know Susan's concerned for her daughter. I've got 4 young kids. I'm concerned about the growth of the city. And all of these issues, they're not, you can't just talk about one in a vacuum.
That's right.
Right?
And so
So I'm not trying to get around your public transportation, the debate or the question, but I think it needs to be really tailored to what part of the city are we talking about. Yeah. And I mean, there are people in rather urban parts of the city where we do need to expand bus service immediately to help people get to their jobs. I think that would be absolutely something to look at, and something to make a priority.
Absolutely. It's not often I get a compliment, so I want to make sure that I put this out there. John did follow up. He said, I wasn't alluding to bringing federal agencies. I was more so asking regarding your early statements on supporting businesses to larger businesses. For example, your statements on dry cleaners. As far as infrastructure, I am entirely in agreement with the moderator. But
the check's in the mail.
Exactly. There you go. My number one fan. That's why Chesapeake's challenges are much different than the challenges you get in a city of 400,000 plus people like Virginia Beach, or a city of concentrated urban environment like Norfolk. I mean, we have the whole 9 yards spread out over so many square miles, it's not even funny. You know, you got South Norfolk, then you got the Greenbrier area, you got us down in the Hickory area, the south side, and then you spread all the way out through Deep Creek and into Western Branch. This area, the land mass is not only huge, but you know, the city, again, the third largest city in Virginia. So our problems run the gamut, and trying to address them, you really do have to address them in pockets, which leads me to an interesting debate that at least, or an interesting topic that has been introduced for discussion during this campaign by a candidate who is not sitting here. And that is, should we go to a ward system?
You want me to handle this
I
one?
know Susan's very passionate about this particular issue. I will let you go. You go first.
I am pretty passionate about this. I don't favor a ward system, and the reason, a couple of reasons there. I was raised in upstate New York, and when I say upstate, I mean upstate, where ward systems were pretty prevalent, and one of the things that concerns me about that is that when you have one representative representing that area, and in our situation, we have as Matt said, kind of the boroughs, the areas that we have. What I saw happen, especially as I was following things as a child, even and as a teenager, is that you see all these, kind of deals having to be made back and forth, that because you only had that person looking out for that one area. And so they'd have to make a deal with another area to try to, say, well, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And what it kind of led to were backroom deals. And so for me, it just seems like that is a pretty big pitfall in that system. I would much more prefer, wherever I live in the city, knowing that I have 9 people that are responsible to me. And that I know that every single one of them is responsible to me. Mm-hmm. And the key is to, vote somebody in that is going to be responsible to you, and that will, walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So, I feel that a ward system is just not something that really I would like to see us have. I think the at-large system is much better.
Your thoughts on this?
Well, I know.
Jim, not that I'm passionate.
Doesn't have to be passionate,
I'll tell you, I'm a lawyer, so I could talk about anything. And actually, when I told my dad I was going to law school, the first thing he said is like, "I hate lawyers." And then I told him I was joining the Navy JAG Corps, and he goes, well, "At least you're bringing some honor to the profession." But so of course I've got an opinion. I want to know. I'm not in favor of the ward system either. And I think if you look at the candidate that you're referring to, he's actually modified his stance. At first he was for a complete ward system. Now he's for a hybrid system with some at-large seats and some ward system. So it leads me to believe he hadn't fully thought the whole thing through. But my point is, I think it leads to siloed self-interests. And I agree with Susan. I think that when you have, think about it, to get anything done on council of 9, you need 5 votes.
You gotta have 5.
Yep.
So if you're only looking out for Greenbrier, how are you going to get something done for Greenbrier unless you're making a deal with 4 other people? And I agree with Susan. I think you need to be accountable to the city. We all are getting ourselves into various neighborhoods. We're going into the community. We're learning the interest. And I'll tell you, it has been an awesome experience. I was walking in Indian River, and through the course of this campaign, heard some people in Indian River who were very concerned about drainage issues. I've heard there's about 500 people with the sale of the Aqua Virginia. They're very concerned about having clean water. But they're both Indian River. That's their area. And would having one person who is accountable to them help them more than having 9 people right now, at least wanting to learn about the issues and at least wanting to try to help? So I'm not in favor of it either.
If you're just joining us, it's Matt Hamel, Susan Vitale, and I'm J.R. Hoeft. Thanks for being with us on the podcast. Really appreciate it. I call it a podcast, but live stream on Facebook. And we welcome your comments and your questions on the thread here, and we'll get to them. We've had a good conversation, I think, here with John, so appreciate his thoughts. We've got another question from Maggie that we're going to get to here in a second. But as some of you know, I'm also a columnist for the Princess Anne Independent News. And so my focus area is talking about things that, quite frankly, impact both communities, Chesapeake and Virginia Beach. And this is one of those things that is a topic for conversation. And just, the city council elections has this idea percolating. So I haven't quite formulated the column yet. But the idea is this. I've been looking into how Virginia Beach has gone through with its current system since 2008 and having their election paired with the federal election, which again it is this year. And one of the arguments that was made by the NAACP that I saw very early on is that this would have the opportunity of electing more African Americans to city council. Well, in my research, and I'm going to have to verify this to make sure that it's absolutely 100% correct, is that only one African American on a city council body of 11 has served in Virginia Beach in that period of time. Whereas if you look over at Chesapeake, in the at-large under 9, when there's only 9 people on city council, we have had 4 African Americans serving at one particular moment in time with at-large elections. And so, to me, that minority argument doesn't hold water, and they have this hybrid, funky system of between ward and at-large and what have you, and have tied it for more turnout during a federal election. But here, you guys are walking around talking to folks. How do you feel about the election being split from the federal election? Do you find, obviously, that the people who are out there voting, they're more passionate about the issues, they're more informed about the issues, they're going to vote for the candidates who they trust the most, or would you like to have a more competitive environment where you're running on the president's agenda?
You're looking at me.
Because you were smiling.
Well, I can tell you as a first-time candidate and somebody who has for the first time asked people to donate to a campaign, it is extremely difficult to get your name out there. Mm-hmm. I would say that a November I could only imagine how much money I would need to raise to have any chance of getting my message or my personal story out there. I'm having a hard enough time doing that right now for a May 1st election when it's just school board and city council and a mayor running. So I don't know that a November election would make people more engaged at the city council and school board level. I think there's too much money that goes into these federal races that it'd be drowned out. I think that the question, though, talking about voter apathy, is really a very interesting thing. And if you look over the last 10 years, the highest voter turnout was when Mayor Krasnoff ran against, or Becky Adams ran against Mayor Krasnoff, and I believe, if my memory serves correct, it was an 18% turnout, and that was in 2008. It pretty much runs between 14%, I think, and 16%. I mean, again, please don't quote me.
No, that's fine.
Hold me to these numbers.
Yeah.
But when I looked at this a while ago, I believe that's roundabout the correct turnout. And that's pretty sad. And I think that if you were going to turn it into a November election, yeah, you get higher turnout, but would the voters be more educated on the issues for city council and school board? And I don't believe that would be the case, quite frankly. I just don't. I think we'd be drowned out. So I'm not in favor of that for that very reason. I think it's.
It's done. Okay. I mean, you're in my house. It's obviously cuckoo, so we're all good.
But then I got a question about this at a forum, and somebody said, well, how do we fix it? And I'll tell you, one of the things that's been a joy for me in this campaign is walking around with my 15-year-old daughter. Yeah. And we've been going door to door. She's been engaged in the campaign. She'll tell me, oh, this is a good place to put a yard sign. Obviously we have to worry about the public rights of way and make sure we're following the city ordinance. But I've been engaging her. She's been engaging me. It's been that part, regardless of what happens, and I really hope to earn people's votes. I mean, I'm doing this to try to earn confidence in people and ask for their vote. But even if it doesn't work out for me, it's been a very, very fun experience. My daughter knows a heck of a lot more about city government. She really knows it a lot, and she knows now how many things are that turn on the vote of council and how many things we're really involved in. And that's one way we can fix this, I think. Yeah. And I'm hoping that this is going to be for her, even if she never wants to do anything like this, and quite frankly, maybe I hope she doesn't, but she'll be more engaged, she'll be more aware, and she'll want to be more involved in some capacity.
One of the things that I plan on doing is posting, it's already posted on the city website, so if folks want to go and see these things, they can just go to the city website and see it. The information is transparent. But you make a great point. A lot of the things that people complain about in the city, they have a plan to address, or there is infrastructure in development to, talk about that particular issue, or there are revenue forecasts that are looking forward, several years. There is, a budget that you can review and see where we are spending or allocating our resources on. There are public hearings that, yes, you can go to. You may not be able to go to a public hearing at the House of Representatives, but you can certainly go to a public hearing on your city budget. Right. In fact, they are having these discussions ongoing as we speak. If I'm not mistaken, the swearing in is June 30th, Council?
I thought it was July 1st.
July 1st.
July 1st? Okay, well, that's when the budget is approved. If I have my numbers here correct, I want to make sure that I get this accurate. I had it here. Darn it. See, I have too many tabs open. My bad. So I believe you guys are your very first action, or maybe they vote first and then they swear you in. I don't know. But the point is that the budget is currently being discussed and is not going to be formally approved until later on this spring and summer. So citizens have the opportunity to participate, and it just would be nice if more people did, and if they were more informed. So instead of just A, not knowing when the election is, May 1st, B, not being informed about the issues, go to the city site and find out, and C, participate, because you actually can. I mean, right. I'm so focused on state issues. The J.R. Hoeft Show, we podcast about things that affect the entirety of the Commonwealth. Talk about the U.S. Senate races and stuff like that. I live in Chesapeake. And so having the opportunity to have you come into my home and have this conversation and broadcast it to my neighbors, I think is an awesome thing. You don't have, as a citizen, I've got 2 city council candidates in my house at the same time. I can ask them any question that I want to about my community. I'm so blessed that you guys came
God bless America.
And were able to do this. And so I just wish more citizens, kind of took the bull by the horns and participated. Okay, enough of that soapbox. We only have a few minutes left, and there's a lot of questions that we haven't gotten to yet. One of them, let's continue our conversation regarding Hampton Roads and working together as a community and as a larger community. There's a lot of criticism about the balkanization of Hampton Roads. The lack of being able to work on regional comprehensive plans. How would you approach working with your neighbors in Portsmouth and Norfolk and Virginia Beach and whatever? How do you feel about the planning commissions? In general, what do you think, Susan?
Well, certainly, I think that we do need to address more of our issues on a regional level. Is that generally where I think you're going is. Whether it's transportation, whether it's, we're in a lot of competition a lot of times with, our sister cities for things that really we don't necessarily have to be in competition for. If we would just do a little bit of planning with them, we potentially could all win. Whether that's, sport arenas, or whether that's transportation issues, or whether it's, large businesses, but I absolutely support a much more, regional approach. Anytime we can do that. There's efficiencies that can be gained by doing that. We all save money by doing that. I have a degree in accounting and an MBA. And so one of the things that I'm very, keen on is when it comes to budgets, is that, and not to mention 26 years in the federal government, running budgets in the United States Navy, is that, there is always room for improvement. There is always room for efficiencies. And we can do that by partnering with Virginia Beach, with Norfolk, with Portsmouth, with Suffolk. Being able to partner with our sister cities is going to be a critical way ahead, in my opinion.
I echo that, and I think the only additional point I could probably raise to what Susan mentioned is I think this is an opportunity for us to talk a little bit about Mayor Rick West, who's running for essentially re-election, although it is going to be his first full term as mayor. Is a lot of that regionalism and the partnership comes from the mayors, from the leaders of the city, and I think. Council, we're leaders. We're supposed to be leaders too, but I think if you have a good, strong leader who is able to engage the mayors of these other cities and put away some of the more parochial concerns and some of the more some issues that have perhaps plagued cities in the past, that's another way. And so I think I've heard Mayor West talk about this, how he speaks routinely with other mayors. And I went to the State of the City address, and he had several other mayors in attendance, and he recognized them there. And I think that those are, in addition to the things Susan said, that is another, building these relationships and having good leadership is also very, very important.
Absolutely. One of the things, we talked a little bit about regional planning and zoning and voting in that regard. What we also need to address, and we talked about the budget a little bit, is the tax rate. And so taxes have been very good in Chesapeake, and we've held the line on it. But there's an interesting thing with how we collect our revenue. It is mainly based on the property tax, and you can hold the rate constant, but you can still end up paying more tax. And that's what's going to happen this year. The rate is going to be held at $1.04 with the 1 cent surcharge for mosquito homes. So a lot are $1.05 on $100. That's going to stay steady.
Are you about to say that assessments are going up? Is
that what you're saying? Assessments are going up. Yes. And so people are going to end up having to pay more taxes. Kind of like a little kabuki dance thing there going on. What do you guys? How do you feel about that? Is it okay?
Sounds like a little bait and switch question.
Yeah,
he plays all nice for about 45 minutes, and then he slips a question like that.
5 minutes left.
Well, I know I've read this stuff online too, and I think I know where you're getting some of that data. And you could position that as a bait and switch. You could say, look, we could lower the tax rate, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you could do that for people and raise their assessments at the same time. So it all is how you manipulate the numbers and how you ask that question. But again, I haven't been a part of that decision making, and I can, when people are looking at our platforms and looking to elect candidates, you're looking at what platform are you running on, right? My platform is never to look to raising taxes as the first option ever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I don't think you ever say you would never ever do something, because I worked inside a prison in Baghdad with extremists. I don't think taking extreme position on any issue is a very good idea, but I think I can tell you I would never look to raising taxes as a first option. Beyond that, I knew exactly where you were going with the question, and you were, well, the assessments went up, tax rate held. We could say the tax rate held steady, but we're getting more money out of our citizens. That's true, but I guess if you really want to talk brass tacks, did the property values actually go up over the last year? And I would put that on you to do the research on that, and if you don't think that they did, then you actually may have a legitimate point, and it might be a very fair question. On the other hand, if they did, and the economy has improved and people's homes went up, then maybe it's fair.
Hey, I asked the questions. No one is asking me my opinion. I want to see where you guys stand on the particular topic. I could give an answer here, and I have a pretty good one. But Susan, what are your thoughts?
No, I agree with Matt. I think that's just echo his comments. I think that we do have a well-managed city. The bottom line is that yes, I too would use raising taxes as a last resort. I would rather see us, manage a budget efficiently, and I think our city, council has done that. I think that we have had they've done a good job at that. So I don't think I have much more to add other than what Matt said, but.
Honestly, we all know that the rate is $1.04, and with a 1 cent mosquito tax. We're all aware of it, and we know that our property values are going up. We also know that some of our schools are in need of improvements.
Right.
They are in need of teachers. We know that teachers have not had a raise in years. We understand that taking care of our city employees is what keeps our city a well-managed city, and so to me, I think this is a sign of the city going well. And honestly, $1.05 on 100, it's one of the lowest rates in the entire community. And for us to be as blessed as we are with the benefits that we have, as a citizen, I can give my opinion now. I think we're fine.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about the fact that we're one of the only cities that does not have a trash fee, a trash pickup fee. That, we haven't had a storm, water raise. I mean, there's a lot of good things that have gone on.
And they did a wonderful thing. Wasn't the tipping fee reduced or something along those lines with SBSA?
Yeah.
Sean saved the city $2.5 million a year.
Yeah.
So quite frankly, the city management is doing a fantastic job. Just to explain to the citizens real fast, or those watching real fast.
Can I just add one more thing on that?
Go ahead.
And I want to point out that because it is so well managed, and has been so well managed, we recently the city council was able to provide $2 million in funds towards hardening our schools, and furthering the safety of our children. That's huge. I don't know of too many cities that could say, hey, look, we are so well managed, we had reserve funds for emergency situations like this to be able to address things that perhaps are going to be unforeseen, like the recent tragedies that have occurred, to make sure that we're safe.
And that's what I want to talk with our remaining moments left. We haven't really got into public safety discussion at all. Where do you see the city in terms of its public safety, and how do we manage maintaining the public safety that it is, or improving it?
Well, as it relates to the schools, I'll tell you, I have a daughter who's 15. She goes to Grassfield High School. And the things that she is telling me, and I've listened to her and her friends, it is absolutely frightening. And she's talking about that when they're doing drills and having to go outside at the maximum kill time or kill zone, or where they can stand in their classrooms if a shooter were to come by and put a gun through a window, they want to put masking tape on the floor so they know where they can stand. This is their reality right now. And this is my daughter and her friends, and I think it's absolutely repugnant that's what the conversation is right now. I think that there are certain things, if you want to talk about public safety in the schools, I think there are a couple of ideas that could be implemented, such as making sure the cameras that are already there are working and all tied into an emergency operations center. I think that would be a wonderful first step. But I think your question is a lot larger than that. Right?
It is a broad question, but I do want to I want to go into that a little bit further. I had Corey Stewart on. He's chairman of the Board of Supervisors in Prince William County. And what Prince William County is, obviously, he's running for U.S. Senate as well, but that's not the context of this point. I guess they are hiring veterans, armed veterans to serve in the schools. Is that something that we should explore in Chesapeake? Is that a thought? We're all veterans.
Yeah, we are.
Would you trust me with a gun?
I don't know.
I don't know if I trust me with a gun. I don't know if I trusted me with a gun when I was in service.
The beginning of a good joke. There was a PAO, a lawyer, and a JAG, and an intel officer.
But is it a worthy thing to explore?
I don't know.
I mean, go ahead, Matt.
I know you're not prepared for the question. I wasn't even prepared to ask it.
I would say this. First, the debate was about arming teachers, and I know a lot of teachers. My son plays on a baseball team with a lot of the parents are teachers, and I have yet to talk to a teacher who, unless they're really into firearms, would feel comfortable being armed. I know that wasn't your question. It was about hiring veterans, and I think to give you a really honest answer, though, is there's a lot of things that would go into that as far as budgets are concerned. Who's going to pay for that? How do you do proper background checks on people? How do you make sure they're screened, that their mental health is absolutely perfect? Not perfect, but good enough to do a job like that, for God forbid if something extreme were to happen. So it is a very, very complicated question, okay? So I don't know that I am in a position to give you, I can highlight what I think the issues are that I would think would need to be analyzed in doing that, but I don't know if definitively I would say, yes, that's a great idea right now. I think as a politician, you could say, look, that sounds great. Let's put veterans that can't find a job into doing that, and let's give our teachers a 50% pay raise. That sounds fantastic. I'd love to do that. Mm-hmm. But the reality is the question's very complex. Yeah. And I think that to really, and I know the people that are watching your show, these are people that research issues, and they understand that they are very complicated issues. And beyond that, I'm not going to speculate whether or not it's a really great idea at this juncture without doing a lot more research into it.
Let's just talk in general terms about public safety in terms of law enforcement and fire, because obviously we have not given the first responders enough time at all in this podcast. Just I think because to me they do such a great job. It's not a forefront issue. That's a good thing in Chesapeake. Let's keep it that way. And so the question then is how do we keep it that way? How do we make sure that our first responders are getting the resources that they need to do the job?
Well, Matt and I are both very honored to be endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, and we're, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn because I know that we are both, huge supporters of our public safety, and appreciate those who are retirees that, have put their life into service. I think that, that's one of those questions that, every year you just have to, look at, what the issues are, where can we, provide better compensation. It's all those things that, you go into ensuring that you have a great workforce, making sure that they have the training and the equipment that they need. And I certainly would, be in complete favor of that, obviously. So, yeah.
It's a role of government question, and I can put on my political scientist nerd hat here. The only reason we have government is for our safety. Coming together as a tribe to make sure that we are kept safe and that we have the opportunities to trade with others.
You sound very Ayn Rand right now.
Let's not go there. But yeah, so good stuff. All right, so we've yammered on long enough. It's 8:05. I appreciate the folks who have watched, and we'll go ahead and definitely put this on so people can watch again throughout the course of the campaign through May 1st. We have voteformatthamel.com, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Vote Matt Hamel.
Vote Matt Hamel.
But actually, I also have a Facebook page. I would love for people to go, and it's a Matt Hamel for Chesapeake City Council Facebook page. That would be great, too.
Awesome. And it's friendswithsusanvitale.com?
Right. And Susan Vitale for Chesapeake on Facebook.
Awesome. What are your final thoughts as we say goodnight?
Well, absolutely appreciate y'all watching. It is an absolute pleasure and an honor to be here. And I, hope that you'll get out on May 1st and that you will, in fact, do what so many people have died to allow us to do, which is to vote. It's truly an honor to be able to do that, and it's a right, and we should definitely take advantage of that. So please get out on May 1st and vote for Susan Vitale and Matt Hamel.
Well, I also want to echo those same sentiments, and thank you, Jim, for hosting this tonight. Thanks for inviting us into your kitchen. Cuckoo clock and everything.
Cuckoo clock and the dog walking.
Yeah, that's right. It's been great. I guess I would speak to the people that are watching and say I hope that you've had a chance to learn a little bit about my background, what I stand for, my education, my service. I really tried to research the issues of the city. I tried to go around and understand. I've walked, done the homework. I want to represent the people in the city. I'm genuinely asking people if you're looking for a candidate that has, young kids, but who's a serious candidate. I hope you'll give my candidacy a serious look. I really hope to earn people's confidence, their trust, and I'm asking for a vote on May 1st. And I do hope that you'll support our ticket, Susan Vitale, Matt Hamel.
We also have some other great candidates that we would, hope that you would support as well.
Yep.
Absolutely. Matt, Susan, thank you so much for doing the live stream. And again, folks, the podcast returns tomorrow, jrheft.com, jrhoeft.com, and hopefully you will check that out. And I just appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. So have a good night, and you're going to see me walk around and turn the broadcast off. So